The Sinclair Conservatory's glass atrium gleamed with candlelight and pedigree. San Francisco's elite had gathered in full force for the annual Jude Pediatric Gala, $12,500 a plate and worth every penny if your legacy depended on it. Tonight was about power dressed in silk, sealed over scallops and vintage Bordeaux. I adjusted my navy Valentino, sleek, understated, chosen precisely to be underestimated, and watched my stepfather, Martin Caldwell, escort my mother to their front row table. Her third husband, his second wife. My silence? Ardan. Martin's voice sliced through the room's polished hum. Didn't we agree? Staff entrance is through the service corridor. That same sneer, rehearsed in public. I tilted my head, the same way I had earlier that morning, right after signing off on the $7 million donation from Celestia Ventures to Jude, just before the press release went out. Embargoed. For now. I have a seat, I replied, lifting the cream envelope bearing Celestia's crest. Bought how? He asked, eyes narrowed. Those tables are for top donors, family, not fringe guests. My mother touched his arm gently, her diamond cuff catching a glint of chandelier light. Martin, let her sit near the press table, quietly. He brushed her off. Absolutely not. What would the Monroses or the Alvarezes think? She embarrassed us enough last year. Last year, when he accused me of crashing the gala, unaware that I'd anonymously funded the tech suite now bearing his name. There's a lounge near the kitchen, he offered, mock concern barely veiled. A screen, even. You won't miss a thing. Seems more your level. To Martin, I was 33, running a boutique environmental consultancy that barely scraped headlines. He had no idea Celestia Ventures, the clean energy holding company reshaping the Bay's coastline, was mine. Of course, I said with the same smile I used in negotiations, right before the other side realized they'd already lost. He nodded, satisfied. Perhaps next year, if your little venture gains some traction. I thought of the title deed in my bag, the one confirming I now owned the Sinclair Conservatory, and shares in 4 of Martin's prized companies. As I made my way toward the corridor, I passed my stepbrother Chase, a golden boy, orbiting a cluster of hopeful entrepreneurs, probably bragging about his latest Series A. None of them knew the lead investor, the one with full control, was already headed to the kitchen, funded, of course, by the very legacy Chase was trying to live up to. Artie, Chase called, too loud, too fake. Still running that adorable eco shop? Dad might be able to get you a real job. I thought of the merger docs on my desk, pages finalizing Celestia's acquisition of Stratfield Tech, Chase's hemorrhaging startup. Thanks, Chase, I said, I'm managing. He laughed, turning to his audience. Managing. That's a generous word. Then louder. Wait, did you drive that rust bucket hybrid? You should have parked it behind the kitchen. It's upsetting the Maseratis. I nodded slightly. They didn't know the car was a choice, just like the plain leather clutch and the watch with no brand. They didn't know I owned the valet company handling their cars, or that my private collection could outbid their IPO dreams. In the kitchen, the staff welcomed me like an old friend. I knew their names, their stories. I'd made it a point. Miss Ardan, Sophia, the head server, greeted me with a warm espresso. Back here with us again. Wouldn't miss it, I said, settling into a modest seat by the corridor. Best view in the house. And it was. From the narrow window, I saw everything. Martin, smug at the head table. Chase, drinking in praise. All of them certain they still owned the room. My phone buzzed. Transfer confirmed. Hospital acknowledged. Standing by. In 20 minutes, the Jude director would take the stage to announce the night's largest gift. Martin, as gala chair, would give his polished thanks, unaware that the donor he was about to honor was the woman he'd sent to the kitchen hallway. Some canapes, Miss Ardan? Sophia offered. We saved extra. Thank you. I took the tray, then added, and Sophia, remember what I said about updating your resume? She blinked. Yes, but, why? Because tomorrow, there's going to be a new executive team, and I think you'd be an exceptional general manager. The lights dimmed. On cue, Martin stepped into the spotlight, tuxedo impeccable, voice velvet smooth. Distinguished guests, he began, Tonight we celebrate not just generosity, but legacy. He had no idea how true that was. From my seat by the kitchen, I watched the ballroom shift its gaze to the stage, the Monroses, the Alvarezes, all still clinging to their tiers and pedigrees. My phone buzzed again. Update. Hospital board reviewing proposed terms. Overjoyed about the new pediatric wing. Ready for public reveal. Green light pending your go? I smiled faintly. This wasn't just a donation. It was a master plan, architectural designs, sustainable expansion blueprints, and private pediatric care models crafted in collaboration with the hospital's top specialists. While Martin was arranging camera angles, I'd spent 6 months in strategy meetings, site tours, and closed-door funding sessions. On stage, Martin cleared his throat, basking in borrowed spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to announce this year's gala has already received an extraordinary gift, $5 million from a benefactor who wishes to remain anonymous. I stood and smoothed my gown. No, I said, loud and clear, stepping through the kitchen doors, I don't wish to remain anonymous. Silence fell like glass shattering, forks hovered, heads snapped toward me. Martin's mask slipped. Ardan, he hissed, what the hell are you doing? Sit down. I kept walking. Actually, I said evenly, I think it's time everyone knows who's funding the future of Stay. Jude's. Chase half rose from his seat, probably signaling security. I caught his eye and smiled. Careful, Chase, you really don't want to cause a scene tonight. I stepped up, unbothered, and took the mic from Martin's hand. His grip was weak. I'm Ardan Caldwell, CEO of Celestia Ventures, and yes, the $5 million donation is mine. A hush spread, followed by gasps and the rustle of whispers. Celestia Ventures. The firm quietly acquiring waterfront property, backing 3 of the top clean energy startups. The company Martin had spent the past year desperately trying to get a meeting with. This is ridiculous, Martin snapped. Celestia is a multi-billion-dollar firm. You run a boutique eco-consultancy. A front, I said smoothly. A way to observe how people behave when they think you have no power. It's remarkable what they'll say when they think you don't matter. Across the room, my mother nearly dropped her champagne. Ardan, sweetheart, what are you saying? I'm saying, I replied, voice firm but calm, that while you all followed Martin's lead in keeping me sidelined, I was building something much bigger than Stratfield Holdings could ever dream of. Chase scoffed. Come on, everyone knows Celestia Ventures is owned by. He stopped. I raised an eyebrow, inviting him to finish. He didn't. By me, I said, turning toward him. Would you like to see the incorporation records? Or maybe the merger agreement? Celestia now holds controlling interest in Stratfield Tech. Gasp swept the room. Chase's smug expression evaporated. Martin paled. That's not possible, he muttered. We'd have known. Would you? I asked softly. Like you knew who bought this venue last month? Or who now holds majority stake in the Bayview Club you parade through every Saturday? Or the firm managing your trust portfolio? I gave a nod toward Sophia at the kitchen door. With one discreet tap, the massive ballroom screens came to life, slides of ownership documents, merger filings, and investment transfers lit up the glass walls like a corporate exposé. While you laughed at the girl in the corner, I continued, I built a web of ownership that now spans the very institutions you once used to exclude me. Whispers rose to murmurs. Phones were already out. Some began recording, others frantically texting. Martin lurched forward, grabbing my arm. You can't do this, Ardan. Please, think about your mother, about our family name. I gently removed his hand. Family? Like when you made me sit by the valet station at your wedding? Or told the hospital board I was too emotional to handle financial oversight, right after I questioned your donation accounting? The room tilted into chaos. The Monroses were on their phones with legal teams. The Alvarezes whispered urgently in Spanish. Old hierarchies crumbled in real time. This doesn't need to be public. Martin tried again, voice cracking. Let's talk. Just us. Like when you quietly funneled my trust into Chase's failing startups? I replied. When you called it a family investment? Chase shot to his feet. Those weren't failures. We just had temporary liquidity. Sit down, Chase, I said flatly. Unless you'd like me to live stream the investor audit. My phone buzzed. All systems green. Documents queued. Push on your queue. I turned to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to check your phones. In moments, you'll receive reports, investor statements, ownership filings, internal audits, all detailing what's really been happening behind closed doors at Stratfield Holdings. A ripple of notification chimes rang out, crisp, cold, unstoppable. Murmurs turned to gasps, outrage, realization. I watched it spread. By the time my mother stepped forward, eyes glossy, voice barely a whisper, the damage was done. Why? She asked. Why go through all this? I looked at her, then the room. Because some lessons, I said quietly, need more than words. About power, about assumptions, about what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. I turned toward the kitchen entrance. Sophia, I called. She stepped forward, hesitant, radiant. I've just been named general manager of the Sinclair Conservatory, she said, then glanced at me with nervous pride. Miss Caldwell promoted me this morning. The ballroom erupted again. Martin's face flushed purple. You can't do that, he barked. She's just a what? I cut in, voice cool and sharp. Staff? Someone you assumed didn't deserve a seat at your table? That's exactly the mindset I'm here to dismantle. I tapped my phone. The ballroom screens flickered again. Effective immediately, Celestia Ventures is implementing new standards across all managed properties, merit-based advancement, wage transparency, and mandatory equity audits of all executive teams. I turned to Martin. Including a full audit of your expenses. You'll destroy everything, Chase snapped, face twisted with panic. No, I replied calmly. I'll rebuild it into something that actually matters. I glanced at the hospital director, standing silent but watchful amid the storm. The new pediatric wing will be named after Sophia's son, Matteo. 3 years ago, he was denied care here because the board deemed their application non-priority. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, tears welled. I was the anonymous donor who covered his bills, I added gently. And this gift? This is just the beginning. Celestia Ventures is launching a permanent foundation to ensure no child is denied care based on income or influence, ever again. Martin collapsed into his seat, finally realizing what he had lost. This wasn't a stunt. It wasn't revenge. It was a restructure of power, of legacy, of who gets to decide what matters. I turned to the room. Your memberships at the Bayview Club, the Nautilus Yacht Club, the estate wineries? They'll be reevaluated, not based on your lineage, but on how you treat those you once overlooked. Then, one final turn to Martin. And you might want to check your personal accounts. His jaw twitched. Celestia's forensic team found some discrepancies. The SEC will be very interested in your handling of charitable funds. Security stepped forward, not to politely usher them out, but to guide Martin and Chase into the side vestibule, where 2 federal agents stood waiting. I watched in silence as the same men who once ordered me to enter through service corridors now stood at the threshold of their own reckoning. My mother approached slowly. Her diamond earrings trembled with each shallow breath. Her perfect mask had cracked. All these years, she whispered, we thought we were the ones who had it all. Success isn't about show, I said softly. It's about what you build, what lifts others, even when they're not in the room. The next morning, headlines lit up San Francisco. Celestia shocks the Bay. From staff table to CEO, Ardan Caldwell's billion-dollar reveal. Sinclair Gala turns scandalous as old money faces reckoning. But the press missed the real story. This wasn't about retribution. It was about transformation. Of a hospital. Of a system. Of the very definition of dignity and worth. Because sometimes the most powerful justice isn't in burning their empire down. It's in building one that outshines it. And sometimes, just sometimes, the girl they sent to the kitchen turns out to own the building. As I stepped into the crisp night air, Sophia beside me, the murmurs followed us like shadows. But this time, their eyes weren't filled with judgment. They were filled with something else, curiosity, and fear. Because the woman they ignored now controlled their future. What happens now? Sophia asked quietly. I smiled. Now we show them what real class looks like. Not by closing doors, but by opening them. My phone buzzed. A message from Martin's lawyer, likely begging for damage control. I deleted it without reading. Because the best revenge? It isn't cold. It's kind. It's systemic. It's walking into the world with open arms and ironclad resolve. As I drove away in my quiet, worn hybrid, I thought of tomorrow's board meeting, where kitchen staff would sit at the table, and the old guard would learn what it really means to earn a seat. To those who've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or sidelined, this story is for you. Tell me, would you have stayed silent? Or stepped into the light? I read every message. Your voice matters. Because this isn't the end. It's the blueprint. And here's my advice. Never let anyone else define your worth. Build quietly, build smart, build with purpose. And when it's time, don't shout. Show. Stand tall. Not just for you, but for everyone they never saw.